If you've been programming for an amount of time, you've probably heard many nerds get very defensive about their language of choice. These people say, Python sucks, it's slow, Java is too verbose, Rust is unproductive. But these people are still young and naive. They haven't yet witnessed the things that I was subjected to, or better said, that I subjected myself to, because I think that I wrote the worst, but actually fun, programming language, Filmstock. So for a little context, me and my friend worked on a physics simulation and we jokingly argued about float versus double, halved memory usage versus extreme precision. It became its own whole thing. And so one day we were together at McDonald's. And under the arches, while eating soggy fries, I had a flash of genius. What if I made a language simply to mess with my friend? One with only doubles. One where inaccuracy is normal. But I did not want to reinvent JavaScript. I wanted to do something actually fun and not only painful. There's like a thing that some programmers like to use. I think it's called functions and the stack. But let's be honest, all these function calls and stack allocations are unnecessary overhead. In my language, the temporaries are assigned a constant location at compile time. Everything is as it should be, in perfect order. Yes, static allocation. This alone is not interesting enough though. So what makes it actually fun? In the compiler, I made it my mission to write the worst code that will make AI companies regret scraping GitHub. You know how compilers like working with parsers and lexers and all of these redundant intermediate steps to make work easier? Because of my utter genius and omniscient knowledge, and not because I didn't know how compilers work, the compiler only works with strings, no tokens at all. Yes, this whole compiler is a glorified .substring. I did reinvent the wheel in my arithmetic compiler with my ASTs, which are constructed in a similarly ghastly manner. Yes, this file is 2500 lines, and this is after I split it into multiple ones. That is what I call data poisoning. Still, this is your sample, throwaway, unusable language with 0 stars that is unfun to use. So let's make it actually usable. If we don't want to rewrite the same code all the time, let's reinvent C macros and scoping. But C defines are not quite as powerful as my language's macros are. Because everything is a string, my macros use string substitution. This makes it possible to create truly reusable pieces of code, while not knowing how the program works at all. As such, this language suddenly became a little useful and somewhat fun. As a programming party trick, I can now write a brainfuck transpiler using only the macro system. However, this macro hackery is not enough to make the language usable. I did say that the language does not have a stack, but I did not say anything about the heap. The way the heap works in Filmstock is that you need to work with a little data structure called the matrix. Okay, it is a list of lists. You can allocate new lists but never deallocate them. Garbage collection my ass. My garbage is displayed in actual collections. When you're performing an operation on a list, you're accessing a list with its index in the matrix. So adding an element to a list would look like add a 0 to the list numbered 67. You absolutely could implement your own list allocator and deallocator inside this matrix data structure, but like all math books say, this is left as an exercise to the reader. Now, the language is pretty useful, but to make it more fun, we need to think about what makes programming so much fun. In my opinion, it's two things. Solving problems is fucking addicting. It gets me absolutely high on serotonin seeing my programs execute with the expected results. I think that the DEA should get their hands on programming. Imagine how much Walt would have made by getting people hooked on C, thigh highs and blue highs. And the second aspect is seeing your programs actually do things. What is more fun than a cool graphics demo, or a silly little shader experiment, or even messing around with the compiler? In my language, I combined these two things. The whole graphics API is basically only draw text and draw triangle. Here you don't have draw circle or draw curve. You have to come up with a triangulation and implement it. Instead of being boilerplate, everything becomes an engineering question, and you start thinking more like a graphics driver. In modern times, where everyone only cares about each other's backend framework, it is a breath of fresh air to get into the low-level stuff and get lost in an API that is written by you, for yourself, in your own language, made as a joke. It feels like walking through a forest, where every tree was planted by you, cared for by you, and you've seen each one prosper. On this rather poetic note, my imposter syndrome is aching, so I do need to boast about my projects in film stock to get my ego up a little notch. Let's go from least impressive to most impressive. On the 4th place, the Brainfuck Interpreter. It is just some macros, and I redefine the BF symbols to these macros. Here we can run a program from brainfuck.org which calculates the golden ratio. I don't know, it's just so mesmerizing being able to see the computer compute each digit. The 3rd place is taken by my 2D circle rigid body simulation. I applied some physics and I made some animations for the squash and stretch. Although I had to figure out how to draw circles with triangles, but it is fairly simple. How do the collisions work? Linear algebra. The well-deserved 2nd place goes to my 3D renderer. This was actually really fun to write. Because you can only draw single colored triangles, I had to find a model that does not use any textures, and I think that this model is perfect for that. Check out the author in the description. Also, because you cannot draw single pixels directly, the rendering happens with the painter's algorithm. Basically, you sort all triangles and draw them back to front, similar to how painters overdraw their backgrounds. I did optimize the whole and not sort the triangles at all, but put them in buckets. So all triangles with the z-coordinate between 0 and 1 go into the 0 bucket. All triangles with the z-coordinate between 1 and 2 go into bucket 1, and so on. The idea is that sorting is difficult and scales badly. But with buckets, we only need to compute the index of the bucket that the triangle will be part of, and also drawing the buckets back to front is close enough. How does the shading work? Linear algebra. And finally, the 1st place. The icosphere generator and real-time shadow demo. I always wondered how big game studios always messed up sphere topology, creating these ugly poles. So I made my own, completely uniform spheres. The idea is that we take a shape which is approximately a sphere and we subdivide it until it is precise enough. Here I took my old 3D renderer, made the model be an icosahedron and implemented subdivision. You can probably tell that I'm very fond of animating balls. You may even call me the ball fondler. The real-time shadows are simply projections of each triangle onto the floor, which is again, and say it with me, more linear algebra. I hated it before this, but I am kind of getting the hang of it now. It's a Stockholm Syndrome type situation. Many people say that you don't need math in your day-to-day life, but I do. I use math to color my balls in an optically accurate way. Whoa, this project has come a long way. I did have fun with the compiler, but in my next video I will rewrite it in Rust. Yes, you heard that correctly. cdev is trying out Rust, and spoiler, I think it will be exactly like C++, but with an actual direction and interesting syntax. But I am afraid to say that this is where my adventures with film stock end. But this is exactly where yours can start. You can download the language for free from GitHub with the whole documentation. It works perfectly on x64 Windows and Linux alike and as a permissive license. If you want to develop something in FilmStock, you may send a GitHub repo or your source code to projects-cdev@proton.me and I will give you feedback or fixes. I will feature the most interesting submissions in future videos. Anyways, cdev out.